And the Kansas City Chiefs move to 8-0 on this season. Huge win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in overtime today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Chiefs Kingdom, welcome back for another episode of Locked On Chiefs, your daily podcast covering the Kansas City Chiefs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for always making the Locked On Chiefs podcast your first listen of the day. Don't forget, we are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube as well. I am Chris Clark from Chiefs Corner. Down below is Ryan Tracy from RGR Football, and right next to me on the other side, there is Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest. We have a ton to talk about in this game. We're going to get into standouts and game balls a little bit later in the show, but we need to talk about the defense in the next segment tonight. Right now, we're going to talk about Patrick Mahomes and the scary offense and how that went in this game. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Lots to talk about when we start talking about Patrick Mahomes and the scary offense, because there was a point in time in this game where I think the entire air of Kansas City went out for a moment with Patrick Mahomes looking like he was going to be out for a very long time. Couldn't even walk off the field to start. Matt, what did you see in that play?
Yeah, I mean, it was hard to tell initially exactly what had happened because he just looked like, it could, at first it didn't look like it was much of anything at all. Then when you saw it was on the replay, you could tell it was a non-contact injury. He just kind of pulled up very awkwardly. You definitely could hear it get quiet in Arrowhead, and I'm pretty sure it was dead quiet in about a 7-8 region. The fact that he's walking across the field and having two athletic trainers helping him, and then all of a sudden just kind of waves him off, and then starts walking very gingerly under his own power was very encouraging. He goes under the blue tent, and then it was a very odd sequence. He goes into the blue medical tent,
nicely.
Comes out, and while he was doing that, obviously Carson Wentz was taking snaps. He passes. Mahomes comes out. He just jogs a little bit on the sideline, goes and talks to Andy Reid, doesn't have a helmet. Carson Wentz continuing to get ready. Then at that point, they both started throwing to each other. And it certainly, by the time that they got the Buccaneers the third down, it looked like players were getting ready to go into the game. I mean, they were both preparing. But Mahomes obviously comes in and plays brilliantly afterwards. We'll see what the long-term effect of this is. Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes were both asked about, just the severity of this injury. And you probably won't know. Mahomes won't know until tomorrow, with just, to see how it feels. It's the same ankle that he did roll last week against the Raiders. So that's really concerned him. And that was really a big part of, his reaction on the field, because first he was concerned because it was the same ankle, and then the pain just kind of, really hit him, and it just scared him more than anything else, because it was the ankle that he's been dealing with. So once the pain started to subside, that's when he felt better and decided, hey, this isn't going to be as bad as I think. Now, we'll see if it affects him. We'll see if there's anything that's going to require some rest this week, anything that's going to help, affect him prolonged. But, right now I'm not hearing words like high sprain, anything of that nature in dealing with it. We'll see what it ends up being, but it doesn't appear to be that at this point.
Well, and the big thing that we look at I was just going to say, the big thing that we're looking at is they play a short week because they have the Broncos coming in on Sunday, but at least it's in Arrowhead, so that'll help a little bit. Sorry, Ryan, what were you going to say?
Right in that instant, my brain split in two, and one was, oh gosh, what are they going to do here if this is significant? And B, I hope they take him out if it's not significant, because I do like the concept of Wentz in this offense and being able to ride out a partial game or make a couple of starts. And so while panic was ensuing on one side, the other side was Veach did a good job preparing for this, and he's got a guy that he feels that he can trust to go take over a game. And it hit me that I felt both terrified for this fan base and this team, and comfortable that they're in a better position than maybe they have been in the past, Matt, with their backups. overall glad that didn't have to be done. But if that were to happen next week or whatever, or if it is an ankle that maybe they want to take a precaution with, I do feel they're still in better position now than they were in the last couple of Super Bowls to be able to sustain a loss of Patrick for a couple of games and still be able to win ball games. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, it's very natural to go that direction because I went the same direction. It was like, okay, if Mahomes can't finish this game, Wentz comes in here. Hey, this team's in pretty good shape to win this game at this point. After that, you know, you still at the game's tied at that point. You're in a good spot. I mean, we'll see how, you know, the Buccaneers respond to that. But then it was like, okay, you know, what if you had to play a little bit without Mahomes? And honestly, I mean, my concern immediately went to that could have been a severe injury because anything that's non-contact that looks like it's in the ankle, I mean, that's scary. I mean, because that's all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, well, this could be a 12-month injury. So clearly it wasn't. I mean, you know, he's able to get back in there. But yeah, in those few minutes, I don't blame anybody for having some deep, dark, scary thought for a second, Ryan.
Well, and I think the thing that stuck out to me is I thought it was a knee injury. I didn't even think it was ankle when I first saw it because it looked like he caught his leg and it just kind of buckled on him a little bit. So I was afraid it was a knee injury. Obviously, it was an ankle injury. That's a little bit different. But I think the thing that really stuck out to me about this game and him is the way he played. Because if you go back and you watch the Raiders game, he still played very well in that Raiders game, even with a pick in that game. But he actually finally had his first clean game this season. And he not only had a clean game, he threw for almost 300 yards. He had 3 touchdown passes. All of his touchdown passes were on third down. And I'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. His third down play tonight was phenomenal. And this Chiefs offense is showing signs that they are continuing, that they're starting to figure it out in different ways that don't include Travis Kelce. And I'm not trying to say that for a bad aspect of not wanting to use Travis. It's more of having somebody else that can step in and help Travis.
Yeah, I really don't know what to entirely make of this team, of this game, and kind of where the Chiefs are right now because yeah, I mean, they put up decent yardage today. Mahomes was very efficient. You have your running back go over 100 yards. You also averaged 4.6 yards a play. I mean, that's not much, and it's not very much when you just consider Bucs defense is not very good. Especially against the pass. Now, the fact that the Chiefs were able to throw the football today, you had 3 different players in DeAndre Hopkins, Travis Kelce, and Justin Watson that all had season highs for receiving yards today. I think that's to your point, Chris. Hey, an indication that the offense is starting to find equilibrium and moving forward a little bit. But it's not the greatest show on turf that we're used to. I mean, right now it's 4.6 yards on a cloud of dust. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just a weird thing.
It is weird, but what I would say is that don't forget Mahomes was literally 2 or 3 inches away from having another touchdown early in the game that should have been a touchdown by Xavier Worthy. I mean, that was a throw that should have been a touchdown. There was another pass to Xavier Worthy. He wasn't able to get his feet down. We'll need to talk about that a little bit. Probably not tonight, but Worthy needs to figure out where he is on the field and get past those rookie mistakes because that almost cost them. And it was early enough in the game. I didn't think it was going to be an issue, but it almost did cost him in this game.
Yeah, I think there was a couple of kind of rookie mistakes that on Worthy. I mean, we'll see. Maybe some of the players and coaches have different insight into the double reverse and how that kind of came about. That looked like that maybe Worthy just kind of got a little bit too deep and didn't quite execute the way that was drawn up. I thought that even he had to got tackled on the shoestring tackle. I mean, that's going to happen and everything. At the same time, here's every word that you need to be able to get out of those. You need to be able to avoid those in the first place. So just wasn't a very good game for him tonight. Those are learning opportunities. He should be able to learn from that and next time be able to have a different outcome, and especially the deep ball. But yeah, I mean, that's why I say, to a degree, I mean, Mahomes looks like he's getting right. This was a really good indication of it. And I think it's a continuation of like we've been talking about the last few weeks, really ever since the second half of the Chargers game. I think that it just feels like that Mahomes has been getting improving and better, looking more comfortable, even with dealing with the banged up ankle now. That's good. But, at the same time, needs some help around him. And right now, that's been the challenge. I mean, I think there's an opportunity here, clearly. Kelsey's starting to turn things around, had a very good night tonight. DeAndre Hopkins had an absolutely incredible night. He's starting to get some help. But yeah, if you want to average more than 4.6 yards a play, you can't be making some of the little tiny mistakes that they're still making.
Yeah, and that's really my point. Is Mahomes got it so close and made some additional plays, but didn't get help on those early ones. The Chiefs beat themselves in the first quarter. Should have been able to at least have probably 10 points in the first two drives and left a lot of points on the field. But when we get back, we're going to talk a lot more about this Chiefs defense and how they played tonight.
The atmosphere at Arrowhead is unique. There's nothing like it. Nowhere more in the world that you want to watch a ball game than right there from those seats. Finding those seats is always interesting. It makes it super easy to use Gametime. It's all in pricing, so you never get hit with anything strange. You don't get surprised at checkout. You get to see the view from every seat in the stadium, so you know exactly what that ball game is going to look like when you're sitting there. And they offer the lowest price guarantee. You find it cheaper somewhere else, they'll give you 110% of the difference right there on the spot. All you got to do is get the Gametime app. So go download it, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL. You'll get $20 off of your first purchase. Again, all you got to do is create an account and use the code. It's LOCKEDONNFL, and you get $20 off. Go down that Gametime app today. What time is it? Game time. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers, you can bet just $5 and you get $150 back in bonus bets if you win right now. FanDuel Sportsbook, the app, gives you everything that you need to get bets in place for the NFL all in one place. So when you got a hunch in the middle of the game, you want to check out the latest stats, you live by that play-by-play, you can do that and much more in the same page right where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com today and join. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 and official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
When you get into this game and how it played out for Kansas City, you look at the first half, and Kansas City had allowed the Bucs a touchdown in the first half. Yet, when you look at the stats of their QB and you look at what he was able to do, he was 9 for 12 for I think 56 yards in the first half. That is a half of football that you will take as a defense. I thought they played very well in the first half. I think they struggled a little bit more in the second half. What did you see, Ryan?
I was a little bit concerned as the game wore on that the defense in general had been well scouted. And you got to give the offense of Tampa Bay a good kudos there because they knew where they had chinks in the armor, so to speak. I am a little bit concerned about the outside corner play in this ballgame and what it means going forward, especially with the health of Najee Johnson. And I do feel that if this team had been at full strength, this likely is a loss tonight. And that's where my concern comes down to. I do feel like giving up those yards in the second half is more of a concern for next week and the week beyond than it was tonight. But that's something that I think they have to get sorted, Matt. They have options in-house. I don't know if the next 24 hours are going to see them make any additions. But at this point, I could see that being a possibility. Do you think that's an overreaction on my part?
No, I don't. I mean, because I do think that the Chiefs, between now and 3:00 Tuesday afternoon, are going to be, looking and seeing if there's any cornerback out there and there's any, secondary help. And I mean, specifically at corner. I mean, they're not really looking for any safety help, let's face it. But, the second half really didn't concern me that much. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, on the one hand, you can look at this entire game and say, hey, Baker Mayfield threw 200 yards. Yes, he doesn't have Chris Godwin and he doesn't have Mike Evans. That's a deal breaker. But, he had a very good week last week against Atlanta without those guys. And yet this week, this Chiefs defense got the job done. And, and I really felt like that final drive, I mean, I was was a little perplexed by it because I really felt at the beginning of it that the Chiefs were playing a little bit of prevent defense. They were playing 3-down linemen at the beginning of it, and really, they were not getting any pressure, whatsoever on Baker Mayfield on that drive. And I really did feel like that they were playing nothing but prevent defense there, and really some soft zones, and so they gave, and let's also at the same time acknowledge that Sterling Shepard made 2 or 3 incredible grabs on that drive. That any one of them, those weren't necessarily 50 balls. Those might have been 25-75 balls. And they come up, aces on all of them. So any one of those, is complete, that probably changes the tenor and tone of that drive a little bit. And if they had to do over, maybe Spino is a little bit more aggressive on that drive as far as, trying to get after Baker Mayfield, because they'd had a lot of success in the second half of making him very uncomfortable and getting a lot of pressure on him. So I was a little taken aback at just how passive that they were on that last drive. And it really just seemed like they were trying to make sure that they did not give up the long touchdown. And hey, was that a mistake? Clearly not, because they got away with it. But next time, how will they handle that? I think they might handle it a little bit differently.
Well, yeah, they got away with it because their coach didn't go for 2 points. And I think that there's a lot of people that are going to be asking that question over the next couple of days. Should the Bucs have gone for 2 points at the end of, the fourth quarter when they scored that touchdown? But the other thing, Ryan, you point out the corners being a little bit of a struggle. I agree with you, but it's interesting because I believe up until that last final drive, Baker, I think, had only completed 2 passes to wide receivers during the night. Like that's how much they were shutting people down. So while they do struggle, and obviously they didn't have Godwin, obviously they didn't have Evans, so that's a big difference in how this game would have played out. But to keep them to that type of night, and then really the guy that beat you, and this is what we talked about going into this game, is Cade Otton is the one that really beats you on a regular basis. 8 receptions on 11 targets with a touchdown tonight. That is the guy that they had to take away, and they weren't able to get that done. I agree with you to an extent that they have issues that they got to figure out at corner, and maybe they're going to go out and they're going to make a move and try to add a corner to this roster, which would make a lot of sense. But I would also say that when you look at how this game played out and how this game was being played, the conditions didn't really help corners trying to make cuts and trying to stop wide receivers. And I think that also plays into how sloppily this offense and defense looked at times.
You'll get no argument from me. I thought a couple of guys stood out in their effort. I thought it was a good performance for Joshua Uche getting on the field for the first time. I saw some push. I saw some good leverage bull rushing. He got off the ball and he provided that first step explosiveness that they've honestly been missing. I thought George Karlaftis played his butt off until the injury. I thought we saw a nice back-to-back plays by Jaden Hicks on the field for the first significant plays of his tenure in Kansas City. So there were some uptick sides as well, Matt. Did you see the same thing, or is anyone else that really stood out to you?
Yeah, you ticked off a couple of the big ones for me. I definitely liked a couple of the hits that Jaden Hicks had. He laid a hit stick on Cade Otton that I didn't think that he was going to be getting up from. So kudos to him being a tough player, because that was a big hit. But yeah, Carlos just had a really strong effort in the first half. It had a sack that gets taken away by probably a little bit of a phantom penalty, but those go both ways. I didn't think the officiating was really a big factor tonight. I know it seemed like there was a lot of angst about the officiating, but I really, I think they most of it right tonight, and it all balanced out in the end. This was, a really good, to me, group effort defensively, and it wasn't bad. You look at the total results. It's okay. 24 points. As we're talking about the Chiefs streak and everything that fits into it. Yardage, Bucky Irving only gets 24 yards. Even if you throw in, Rashad White, the two of them combined for 45. The Chiefs not giving up more than 60 yards to any running back still keeps that streak alive. The defense got the job done the way that it does. Was it as dominating as it was? No. Did they have any, big plays? Not really. So, and Was it disappointing maybe that you're giving up 24 points to a team that doesn't have their top two receivers? Yeah, that does bother me a little bit. But, it did seem like this was, for the most part, a pretty strong group effort, even if it, I think I would probably say Karlaftis had the best night of anybody. Outside of maybe Chris Jones, because Chris Jones, for the most part, was just continuing to destroy the interior of the
doing what he does.
Offensive line and doing what he does exactly, despite double teams, triple teams, and a couple of holds here and there, maybe holds on every play. Maybe that's about the only way you can stop Chris right now. But I think at the same time, there wasn't any major breakdown. I do think, like I said, I think there's a concern, certainly, about the cornerback depth. You're hoping that you get Najee back. You're going to get Jalen Watson back at some point. You feel better about it down the road. But in the short term, you're still going to have to rely on some pretty young guys. I mean, they had Nick Jones that they brought up tonight. Didn't see him a ton of. Chris Wallace got, quite a bit of play because I think he had 5 tackles on the night. So, you are going to have to lean on some of these young guys in the short term.
Well, the one thing I will say really quick, Uche really impressed me, and it wasn't necessarily because he was getting pressure, because he's going up against one of the best left tackles in football in Tristan Wirfs, who is fantastic. But it was his effort and his ability to track down Baker Mayfield from behind. He rushed him, and maybe it wasn't even Baker, maybe it was a running back. He rushed, and the guy ran right past him, and he still ran him down from behind. And that is the type of play that is going to make this team even better. Love seeing that type of play from Uche. When we get back, we're talking about more standouts and the game balls right after this. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Take a moment to say thank you to someone in your life. It doesn't really matter who it is. For right now, for me, I'm going to say thank you to Patrick Mahomes. I think he played a great game, came back, helped the Chiefs get this win. Really appreciate it. This month is all about gratitude. And along with the person I just shouted out, there's another person we don't get to thank enough, ourselves. It's something hard to remind ourselves that we're trying our best to make sense of everything. And in this crazy world, that isn't easy. Here's a reminder to send some thanks to the people in your life, including yourself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/lockedon. BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Lots of different standouts to talk about in this game. Obviously, we kind of already talked about the defense a little bit, talked about Patrick Mahomes. Before we get to game balls and other standouts, I do want to throw this out there. On the night, they talked about it on ESPN afterwards. Chiefs were, the story of the game was they went 12 for 18 on third down. Patrick Mahomes completed 11 of 13 passes on third down and got 10 first downs for 128 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's a huge night. He was on target just about every third down, and the only one that he didn't get a first down on was 3rd and 16, which he threw to Perrine, which I believe was a screen. So at that point, you kind of figure it's not going to be a completion. There were also 2 sacks given up on third down, but overall, Mahomes had a fantastic night on third down. Really stood out to me.
Yeah, I thought that, overall it was obviously the offense had a very efficient night. I mean, despite the fact that, I'm harping on the 4.6 yards per play. And really that's affected by a couple of really big losses. I mean, they had a couple of long sacks. Obviously they had the reverse that went the wrong direction. So they had a handful of plays that really just kind of, affected that number more than anything. But there's a couple of really good things to take away from this. I mean, obviously, once again, this is the 4th game in a row where they've had at least one long sustained drive of 13 plays or more. Tonight it was 15 plays, 8 minutes, 26 seconds. When you can take over a game and push it around like that, and that was a difference too between the first half and the second half. The offensive line had a much better second half than they did the first half. The Mahomes was definitely being harassed a little bit more, hit a little bit more. Vita Vea just absolutely was destroying things in the first half. They cleaned all it up. I mean, they really turned it around in the second half, and I was really impressed by that. But still, I mean, there's the little tiny things that they've got to figure out. I mean, there's still some of these 3 outs that are just silly little mistakes. I mean, the screen to Samaje, that just how that happens. I mean, it's just concentration. So, those are the things that continue to have to get cleaned up.
Looked like he was trying to look.
I think
for
the most
a place
encouraging.
To go. Sorry,
I think the most encouraging thing out of all of this is that you still have only seen a glimpse, I think, Matt, of what the triangle can become between Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, and DeAndre Hopkins. Just the fact that they're at this point, there was that misread on the second slant there that they did a pretty good job on the broadcast explaining. But just understanding what the veteran brings to the room, this puts the ceiling back up, even though it's not a vertical threat like he may have been in the past. This changes everything in just having that veteran presence in the wide receiver room to do what Patrick needs done on the other end. And I think we just scratched the surface. How do you see it?
Yeah, this team, you have just barely scratched the surface of what DeAndre can do with this team. I mean, he still does not have most of the playbook installed. There's just a few sections here and there so far that he's picked up, a little bit of the third downs, and this week they obviously included a little bit more for him. But he's so much, and I got a chance to talk to him about this on Saturday. I mean, he and Travis Kelce are very similar. They both see football the same way. And it just so happens that they both see football the same way that Patrick Mahomes does. So, Kelce's philosophy is really just going out there and you're trying to find the voids. That's exactly what DeAndre Hopkins does. And he's looking to find those. Well, Mahomes knows where those are going to be too. So they're all three of those guys are high football IQ players. They get it. They understand it. So, when you've got 3 players that think along those same ways, I mean, and that's how, to me, the reason why DeAndre Hopkins had a good night tonight was because Travis Kelce had a good night and vice versa. I mean, those guys are going to be able to make life easier for each other. Whether they're lined up opposite each other, whether they're on the same side of the field, it doesn't matter. And the fact that they do see football the same way, it's very instinctive. And so the Chiefs can absolutely take advantage of that. Are there going to be mistakes? Sure, because there's going to be some routes and concepts and everything like that are new to DeAndre, and he hasn't picked them up yet, and he's going to make mistakes because he doesn't know them yet. He hasn't had the repetition yet. But there's also going to be some plays that he's going to make that nobody else can. Just like that contested catch, because there's nobody else on the team that makes that play.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that the Chiefs have had another receiver for Patrick Mahomes that can make that play.
Nope. No, and Ryan, I know you and I've talked about this a lot. They haven't had that guy. And we've been hoping that they would find somebody that could be that guy. They haven't had him. And I would also argue that I don't think Mahomes trusts anybody to try to make that play other than like a Travis Kelce type, and to have the trust in DeAndre Hopkins to make that throw in that moment to a triple covered area was insane. And the second you saw the ball actually get to DeAndre Hopkins, I knew it was caught. Like, that's the other thing about DeAndre Hopkins that we don't think about very much, is that when the ball is thrown to him, if it's in his target area, it's being caught. That ball's not getting out of his hands. So phenomenal play by him on that one. And let's go ahead and jump into game balls for this one. I think Hopkins played phenomenal. But Matt, you're the guest. We'll go ahead and let you go first.
Yeah, I've got to go with DeAndre Hopkins. The 2 touchdowns, obviously incredible. That grab was absolutely incredible. I think it had Next Gen Stats, I think, said that had a 12.5% chance of a completion. With DeAndre Hopkins, it's obviously closer to about 88%. I mean, it's the other way around. But he absolutely came up when this team needed him. And the fact that his presence on the field allowed other players to make their plays, especially Travis Kelce. So, I mean, you're just scratching the surface. But obviously tonight, Chiefs don't win this game without DeAndre Hopkins.
I completely agree, and I think it's interesting because I think that Travis and DeAndre having games back to back where they both are feeding off each other is showing you what's going to be coming for the Chiefs, and they're both probably their best games this season in back to back weeks. I don't think that that's a coincidence. Ryan, who you got tonight?
With a quick shout out and head toss to Trey Smith because he facilitated a lot of this. Mine goes to Kareem Hunt because when you came out and you were a little bit lethargic, you were making some mistakes. They started the second half really poorly. I have 0 positive pluses on my column for either first drive for either side of the ball in the second half. Getting Kareem Hunt going and going back to basics and restoring balance to this offense brought the force back into alignment. And that is not just because of the blocking. Kareem Hunt made yards today. Kareem Hunt moved the pile today. And I thought that was the effort that I wasn't sure he was capable of making when he came back to this team. Well, he proved me wrong, and I'm glad he did it. He gets my game ball.
It's fair, and he is going to be sore. He continues to be the guy that is getting a ton of snaps. 27 carries tonight for over 100 yards. Impressive for Kareem Hunt. I'm giving my game ball to Patrick Mahomes. As I already talked about, his third down efficiency, 128 yards, 3 touchdowns on third down. Just continued to put the ball only where his players could make plays on it. And I thought he played phenomenal. Who did you think deserved a game ball in today's show? Thank you all for watching today, and we will talk to you tomorrow.